The Crusades, which spanned several centuries, from the late 11th century to the late 13th century, are often framed as a series of religious wars aimed at reclaiming the Holy Land from Muslim control. However, examining the underlying motivations, political dynamics, and broader consequences of the Crusades reveals that they were not purely religious in nature but were also deeply entwined with political power plays, territorial expansion, and the desire for wealth and prestige. Religious motivations. The Crusades were primarily promoted as holy wars to reclaim Jerusalem and other sacred sites in the Levant from Muslim control. The Catholic Church played a central role in framing the Crusades as acts of religious duty and piety. Papal authority. Pope Urban II's call for the First Crusade in 1095 at the Council of Clermont was based on the idea of responding to the Muslim occupation of Jerusalem. The Pope promised spiritual rewards, including indulgences, forgiveness of sins, to those who joined the crusade, framing it as a religious obligation. The Church saw this as an opportunity to assert its authority over Christendom and to unite the various Christian factions under one banner. Religious zeal. Many European Christians, particularly knights and nobles, were motivated by a deep sense of religious devotion. The promise of spiritual rewards and the idea of defending Christianity against non-believers were significant incentives. Additionally, there was a belief that fighting in the Crusades would guarantee entry into heaven. Defending Christianity. Crusaders were often motivated by the belief that they were defending Christianity from the infidels and restoring Christian rule in sacred cities, such as Jerusalem. This was seen as a righteous cause in the context of medieval religious beliefs, where the Church had a dominant influence over the moral and political landscape. Political and territorial motivations. While religion provided the ideological justification for the Crusades, political and territorial ambitions played a crucial role in motivating European leaders and nobles. Expansion of power. European kings, lords, and knights saw the Crusades as an opportunity to gain land, wealth, and titles. The Crusader states, established in the wake of the First Crusade, such as the Kingdom of Jerusalem and the Principality of Antioch, provided a way for Western Europeans to extend their political and military influence in the East. This was particularly appealing to younger sons of noble families, who had few opportunities to inherit land in Europe but could acquire it through military conquest in the East. Strengthening papal authority. The Pope's role in calling and organizing the Crusades allowed the papacy to assert its power over both secular rulers and the broader Christian world. By controlling the Crusades, the Pope could mobilize Christian knights and armies, extend his influence across Europe, and challenge rival religious authorities, particularly the Eastern Orthodox Church. The Crusades also offered the opportunity for the Pope to assert the superiority of the Roman Catholic Church over other Christian denominations, such as the Eastern Orthodox Church, which was already weakened after the Schism of 1054. Byzantine and Muslim rivalries. The Byzantine Empire initially sought aid from the West due to the growing threat of Turkish invasions. The Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos appealed to the Pope for assistance, hoping to shore up his empire's defense. However, the Crusaders' involvement ultimately undermined the Byzantines. The Fourth Crusade, 1202 to 1204, ended in the sack of Constantinople, which marked a significant turning point and exacerbated the rift between the Eastern Orthodox and Catholic churches. Control of trade routes. The Crusades were also about securing lucrative trade routes. The Eastern Mediterranean, controlled by Muslim powers, was a hub for trade in spices, silks, and other valuable goods. Venetian and Genoese merchants, in particular, were keen to gain control over these routes. In return for supporting the Crusades, these maritime republics were granted favorable trade terms and access to key ports and cities. Economic motivations. The Crusades were expensive undertakings, and the financing of these campaigns was often driven by economic concerns. Land and wealth. Crusaders were promised land and wealth in the territories they conquered. The allure of obtaining riches from the Eastern world, such as treasures from the Byzantine Empire and the possibility of controlling lucrative trade routes, was a powerful motivator. Many knights and nobles hoped to gain land in the newly established Crusader states. Redistribution of wealth. The Crusades also offered opportunities for economic redistribution. For example, the land of those who joined the Crusades could be confiscated or redistributed, benefiting the church or the crown. Additionally, merchants profited from supplying crusaders with provisions, arms, and transport, while some kingdoms used the Crusades as a means of financing through taxes or loans. Crusader states as economic hubs. The Crusader states in the Levant became centers of trade and commerce between Europe and the Middle East. The establishment of these states helped to create a stronger connection between Eastern and Western economies, especially with cities like Venice, Genoa, and Pisa, which became powerful maritime republics through their involvement in Crusader logistics and trade. The complex legacy of the Crusades. While the Crusades were framed as religious wars, they had lasting political and economic consequences that went far beyond religious motivations. Cultural exchange. Despite the violence, the Crusades facilitated cultural exchange between Europe and the Middle East. European crusaders were exposed to advanced Muslim scholarship, which helped fuel the intellectual revival of the European Renaissance. They encountered new medical practices, mathematics, astronomy, and philosophical ideas, much of which had been preserved by Islamic scholars. Religious divisions. The Crusades exacerbated the schism between the Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches, particularly after the Fourth Crusade, when Crusaders sacked Constantinople. Relations between Christianity and Islam were also permanently affected by the Crusades, contributing to long-standing religious tensions that persist in different forms today. Decline of feudalism and rise of monarchies. The Crusades had a transformative effect on the feudal system. As many knights and nobles left for the Crusades, their lands and properties were often given to others, leading to a redistribution of power. This contributed to the gradual centralization of power in the hands of monarchs, who were able to consolidate authority over a more unified territory. Conclusion. Religious war or political power play. The Crusades were driven by a combination of religious zeal and political ambition. While the call to arms was framed by the Catholic Church as a religious obligation, the motivations of the Crusaders themselves were often as much about land, power, and wealth as they were about faith. The political and territorial ambitions of European leaders, the economic interests of merchants, and the desire to expand papal influence were all critical components of the crusading movement. Thus, the Crusades were not purely religious wars but also complex political power plays that had significant long-term consequences for both Europe and the Middle East. 1. Political ramifications. Strengthening of monarchies and centralized power. The Crusades, while often initiated for religious or territorial reasons, played a key role in the shift from feudalism to more centralized forms of governance in Europe. Decline of feudalism. As many nobles left for the Crusades, their lands were either left vacant or taken over by other feudal lords, shifting the balance of power. The redistribution of lands, combined with the financial demands of financing crusades, weakened the old feudal structures and created opportunities for monarchs to consolidate authority. Kings could levy taxes, centralize military power, and gain more control over the nobles who stayed behind. Rise of stronger nation-states. With the decline of feudalism, the monarchs of England, France, and Spain increasingly centralized power. In particular, England's monarchy saw its authority strengthened after the Crusades, with monarchs like Henry II gaining more control over the barons. In France, the monarchy benefited from the weakening of local feudal lords and increased its influence over the nobles who participated in the Crusades. Byzantine decline. The political landscape of the Byzantine Empire was dramatically altered by the Crusades, especially after the Fourth Crusade, 1204, when Crusaders sacked Constantinople. This weakened the Byzantine Empire and contributed to its eventual fall to the Ottoman Turks in 1453, significantly reshaping the balance of power in the region. 2. Economic impact of the Crusades. Expansion of trade and economic integration. The Crusades created a direct and lasting connection between Europe and the Middle East, greatly influencing European economies. The interactions between Christian and Muslim merchants facilitated a flow of goods, ideas, and technologies. Opening of trade routes. The Crusades expanded European access to Eastern goods such as silk, spices, precious stones, and fine textiles. Key Mediterranean port cities like Venice, Genoa, and Pisa became dominant maritime powers, benefiting from the trade routes that connected Europe with the Middle East and Asia. These cities became important hubs for both Crusader logistics and long-term trade with the Muslim world. Introduction of new products and technologies. The flow of goods from the East introduced Europeans to new products and technologies, such as advanced Arabic mathematics, the use of the Arabic numeral system, and new agricultural techniques, like irrigation systems. These exchanges laid the foundation for economic and intellectual growth in Europe, particularly during the Renaissance. Financial innovations. The financing of the Crusades led to the development of early banking and credit systems. Italian banking houses, especially those in Venice and Genoa, provided loans to crusaders and monarchs, creating the groundwork for modern financial institutions. Redistribution of wealth and resources. Impact on the aristocracy. Nobles who participated in the Crusades often saw their wealth redistributed, as lands and titles were exchanged or confiscated by the monarchy or the church. Some crusaders, especially those who did not return, left their estates to the crown or the church, further consolidating power within these institutions. Commercial growth. The Crusades promoted the growth of commercial capitalism. The desire for military supplies and provisions for the Crusaders led to the creation of new markets and industries in Europe.